On this episode of BLT's Projects, we return to the Yamaha WaveRunners for one last time to see if we can get them running. I'm BLT, this is BLT's Projects, let's get it going. Alright guys, so we have taken off the old starter and gotten the exhaust manifold, get ready to go back on. This is the brand new starter and it's going to go on. Let's see if we can get the starter on today and get this Waverunner running. The tools you're going to need are basic sockets and ratchets. You'll need a torque wrench, 14 millimeter sockets, 14 millimeter combo wrench, 12 millimeter sockets, 12 millimeter combo wrench, and an assortment of screwdrivers to help with clamps and everything, and some zip ties to re-zip tie your vacuum hoses back in place. So let's get all those tools together and get to it. Today's the day. We're going to go ahead and install our starter right here. Put our bolts on. We've got our exhaust manifold cleaned off and ready to go. We'll bolt that back up and we'll see if we can get it running. Reinstalling the starter, I am going to put some Yamaha lube on the O-ring and stuff to try to help it, one, get in there easier and seat better. So let's go ahead and get it installed. We've got two bolts. We've got a bolt here and a bolt here. Those are just 12s, and those just go in. Your torque specs on this, on the starter, there were not any. On your exhaust manifold are 30 foot-pounds, I believe, and I will double check that before we cinch those exhaust manifold bolts down. Okay guys, just wanted to give you an update. Got the starter back on, working on getting the manifold back on. On this manifold, just make sure that all your bolts are going through the holes in the manifold so it goes on and seats properly. Also, your flat side of the manifold is what's going to be facing up. So make sure that that's on right, and your half rounded parts, the rounded parts of the manifold will be facing down on the engine. So we'll get this done, torqued to about 35 foot-pounds, and we'll be good. All right, we got the starter installed, solenoid, got the battery in. Let's see if she turns over. All right, let's hit the start button and see what we get. Nothing, not even a little bit. Okay, so we know the starter was bad. The solenoid we replaced. So the switch we know is good because it worked before. So that means the battery must be the culprit. Now, the only way we could test that, one way we could test that is with a voltmeter, but a more direct way is to take a test light. And all you do, it's real simple, you just hook up one clamp, doesn't matter which side, to the positive or the negative, and you test your test light. Oh, looks like we got some power there, but it's not super reliable, right? Okay, so that's on the negative side, so that means we got ground. Now we want to test and see if the circuit is complete from the other side. So we'll put it on the other clamp, and we get nothing. So from the positive side, it may be the battery terminal is bad or something else, and we are getting a little bit. So we do get power there, but it seems like we're not getting power to the starter. So let's just switch out the battery with a battery that I know works and see if maybe that's the fix. All right, so we double checked our connections. Let's see if we get to crank. So the question is, why would it crank now and not before? The answer is I didn't have these clamps tightened down. With my power probe that checked to see if we had power, I was easily getting juice. I just hadn't tightened down those clamps enough. So always double check your work. So that brings us to our next question. So it cranks, but it doesn't run. So we have to figure out why that is. And we can go to the basics, which I shared with you in the first video. So we're just going to go back to the drawing board. We know it's getting power from the battery to the starter. So now we know it's getting air because it's open air. So now we have to figure out, is it getting spark and is it getting gas? And so we'll get started on those troubleshooting tips and tricks right now. Next thing I'm going to do is check the spark plugs. So I took those out and made sure that they were still good, that we weren't getting a head gasket issue or anything like that. So checking those even though they were new, making sure they're still gapped right, double checking all my work there. And that's what I know it's hard to see, but we're testing for spark right here. You plug the one end into your spark plug, you plug the other end into your spark plug wire, and then crank the ignition, and you're looking for that light, which is there. It's hard to see, but it is there. So we were getting spark in that cylinder, and I did test the other cylinder, and it tested good. So the reason there's so much white smoke is on the right, the exhaust going down to the rubber boot to go out of the bike. I just hadn't attached the exhaust 100% into there well enough and tighten up that clamp good and tight. Also the top clamp where you see the Yamaha. So we got all that together, and as you'll see in the next section, it's all good. Alright, so we're going to look in the carbs real quick and take the air filter off. These are just basically 8 screws around the edge. Nothing hard to get off. So we'll go ahead and get those off and take a look at these carbs, make sure they're nice and clean on the inside, and check the air filter element, which is basically a metal element. It never hurts to take this off every once in a while, spray it down with some brake cleaner and just clean it off, because you do have oil getting on that filter that's coming through the carbs in these 2-stroke engines. One other thing I'll mention is that if you have a Waverunner, especially something carbureted that's been sitting a while, keep in mind that starting it may not always come very quickly or very successfully right away, because if those carbs are dry, it's going to take time to get the gas in there, get everything primed and ready to go. So be patient. One thing with this Waverunner being partially submerged, I wanted to double check and make sure that there weren't any issues with the compression. So on these Yamaha engines, you should be getting between 150 and 160 psi per cylinder, and as you can see here in the video, we're getting 152, 154-ish, maybe a little more, and both cylinders did check out to be within 10 psi of each other, so excellent compression on both these engines, so we're good there. Okay, now we're done. We're just going to reinstall that air box, put the 8 screws back in, and we're ready to go with the metal air filter in there. We did the compression check. We put new plugs in. Everything's looking good. It's running great. So we're ready to turn it back over to the customer. So here's the engine all back together and running great. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys, and remember, if I can get out here and do this, you can too. So if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. Love to hear from you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much, and have a great day.